Hello and welcome to a very special edition of SU, or another very special edition of Steven University. We're kind of taking the lead from you guys again. Your suggestions. This week we're talking about ships and relationships. The response to this was crazy. I'm honest with you, not sure we're ever going to put anything out to you guys again. I love you, but you gave us a lot of ships.
Right. Well, okay. Well,
it's been hard work to work out what to do.
Can I take responsibility for this on behalf of our listeners and apologise? Because this is my fault.
It's all good.
Because what happened was Chris, quite reasonably, had a question on last week's episode about theories regarding how certain characters ending up together, and Chris very wisely said the words, let's do an episode about relationships, as in existing, tangible, like what's the relationships in the show between the characters that exist, I assume, is what Chris was getting at. And I leapt in with, ships, let's do ships, because I'm an idiot. And I did not know what I unleashed. I'm like a kid in some very bad sort of teen novel that's learnt that magic exists, and he's found a book and he's doing spells well beyond his understanding and comprehension. He releases like the hordes of the undying on the world or something like that, and then has to stop it. I feel like I've done a bad thing. So I just want to make it clear that this is my fault, and I am sorry.
No, it's sad. And to be fair, if I was a listener, I'd have done exactly the same thing.
Of course,
really
and the listeners aren't at fault. The listeners aren't at fault either. I want to make it very clear. This is 100% on me, because I, like I said, this is just misguided Dan, like not really knowing what he was doing in terms of, because I mean, you put people, okay, like guys, once you're at shipping Suitcase Sam, you've got issues. Like,
well, later on we'll be discussing, Dan, Nitarnet Switch, which is the Nintendo Switch and Garnet being a ship and a couple.
And that's actually a great thing, because I don't know if you've seen the Nintendo Switch, but it uses the Garnet colour scheme. That's probably where that's come from.
I'll give you a little preview of what it says. So the Nintendo Switch isn't a real person, but neither is Garnet. And she is, what that word would. Oh, and she is digging that the two things in one that becomes greater than the sum of its parts thing is good.
That's great.
It's got going on.
I mean,
meow.
This is. I mean, again, I like I said, I did not realize the power, to which I wielded when I said, let's do ships. So
to be fair, so. We it kind of works out in a way, because we had a comment on YouTube which was kind of more detailed about the more genuine relationships, and that comment actually pretty much every ship they talked about in that comment, other people those were the ones that other people were kind of genuinely talking about. So we're going to go through the two that we touched upon from Eric's comment last week, and then I'm just going to power read off some of the quicker ones that were in the Discord. We got an awful lot. So once again, if we genuinely didn't talk about something that you want us to talk about, either comment on YouTube or use the hashtag #TalkShip in the Discord. Put the phrase #TalkShip in the Discord, because the other problem is, like, and this has happened 2 weeks in a row, and I should have thought about it, like, it's meant me just like going through the Discord like day by day and hoping I get everything. Whereas if we use #TalkShip, it means that I can search that phrase and find any post. So if we've legitimately not talked about,
I'm not hearing you as clearly as the listeners are. #TalkShip with SHIP.
No. #TalkShip. So TALK, no space, SHIP.
That's what I said.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said talk shit. I was like,
that's what I was hearing when you were saying it. So we're both having the same issue here, that we're both saying the word ship, but hearing the word shit through our phone lines.
Ship is in relationship. So either comment on the video below or use that phrase in the Discord, and then we can look up anyone genuinely.
If there's any major ones missed, we'll definitely come back to it. To be fair, we said that last week, And Chris, your research prowess did not let you down. No one has thus far complained that we missed their thing last week. So
yes, we did have. I do have 2 bits of admin on last week that I feel are important to say.
Yeah.
So one is a general apology. So a few people commented. By the way, in a really lovely manner. No one was annoyed. Everyone was understanding, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't apologise for it. A few people commented that we got a few pronouns wrong.
Right.
When talking about like using people's usernames and stuff, we just made assumptions based on the username on whether they were male or female. We should have just used usernames or said they, because that's better than accidentally doing that. Again, I want to really stress that I was really grateful that no one was arsey, no one was angry. Everyone understood why it happened, but people were just like, "Oh, actually, this is this. No worries." Da 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 da. But just because everyone was really cool about it doesn't mean that I shouldn't and we shouldn't genuinely apologise for it. So really sorry about that. Just a case of many usernames, and you just accidentally saying stuff wrong. So really sorry if we did that to anyone out there. So deep apologies for that.
Yeah, and that's the other problem with this system is like people they leave a comment. We have a username. We don't always have any further information. Some of these people we obviously know from the Discord or whatever, and we've gotten to know. But when you sign up to Facebook or YouTube or any of these websites, there isn't a preferred pronoun box you can tick so that the person who's reading out your username can sort of double check, and therefore a wiser person would have been more sort of general with pronoun use.
Yeah.
But an idiot like me and me would potentially make assumptions, which is exactly the problem, which we acknowledge and therefore apologise for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other one is Shadow Vanity commented on YouTube, and I'm just going to read this out. I think you guys may have misunderstood the Rose's shield caused corruption theory. My understanding is that it's not a matter of whether the shield caused the blast to affect the whole planet versus specifically Rose. I agree it's clear the diamonds intended to obliterate every gem on the planet. I think the theory is that the reason the attack caused corruption when it was supposed to be complete destruction was because the reverberations of Rose's shield disrupted the entire attack, morphing its effect from the destruction to corruption. Also, in that case, it would make a lot more sense why Rose/Pink wouldn't have known the effect of her blocking the attack with the shield would have. As far as she knew, everyone was getting destroyed, and she was just saving what she could. Theoretically, this would be the first time the diamond's powers would have struck her shield, so no one would know what effect that would cause. Yeah, which is really logical.
Really great.
A lot of sense.
I will say, though, that our conclusion, had that been what we'd thought of, would have probably been the same, because our conclusion on that was that'll never become a major story point. It'll be a nice detail if they ever confirm it, I think is what we said. It'll be it'll flesh it out a bit and give Rose like potentially some more angst in her past, but it won't actually. We were like, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the end. It doesn't change the end, so which is that's what happened, and therefore that's the situation they're in now. It might give, like I said, it might it might be used to sort of give Rose slightly more guilt about what happened. But I think even in that version of events, which I think that does, by the way, make way more sense. So thank you for clarifying. I don't think where we landed on the theory would have changed. Does that make sense? Do you think I'm being fair there? Because I think our conclusion was it's really cool and it's potentially a good idea, but even in a world where we've got it wrong, our thoughts were that it wouldn't necessarily play a huge part in the plot of the show going forward. More maybe a cool character note.
Yeah, it's a really cool notion though. All the same, and
that is a really cool version of it. Like that makes much more sense to me. I'd be much happier with that version of the theory than others. There's a couple we misunderstood, I think, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and again, I think more than any other episode, like. Across the Discord and the YouTube, we got the most feedback on that, with people discussing the theories, and with people kind of clarifying things and. You know, if we hadn't have done the ship thing, maybe this entire episode we could have filled 40 minutes, like, doing further discussion on that.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, because we promised the ship thing, we will do that. So,
also, I don't know if 2 episodes in a row
are discussing.
I don't know if 2 episodes in a row of the same topic is a good idea anyway. We'd have probably saved it for a later date. Oh dear.
I don't know if the mic's picking this up, Dan. But did you just play with a sonic screwdriver toy?
I may have picked it up to have something to fiddle with in my hands, and I may have accidentally pushed the button that makes it do this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm usually a little wiser with this. So for those who don't know, I'm quite a fidgety person. So to stop myself from moving like back and forth away from the mic with my head and the rest of like my body, to stop myself from fidgeting during the podcast, I usually have something in my hand. Today I was unwise, and the thing in my hand is a thing that makes noise.
I just heard it and I was like, "Man,
I've got 3 of them in total, and they, you know, I was using Matt Smith's, if anyone was wondering. This is Peter Capaldi's. I've got Matt Smith's here, slightly different tone, and this is Tennant's, which just sounds like it's dying on its arse.
It's good. It's good because we've got the time today to really go through every sonic screwdriver noise. So that's good.
So now I'm holding a USB stick.
Cool. Eric Torres.
Is it Torres?
Torres. Yeah, possibly Torres. I apologise if I've got that wrong. On the Zach Callison interview, left 2 really detailed comments, and I will say before we talk about it, I have made a note of the names. A real credit to Ship Show, SHIP SHOW, and then let's see if I can find the other name. I can't, but there was someone else, but it was mainly Ship Show, to be fair. On the Stephen and Connie comment, it had a really good discussion about it.
I'll be honest with you. In the time we've been doing this, there have been a few really good sort of comment threads that have cropped up underneath our videos. This has honestly been one of the most interesting ones to read because, and it's also certainly inspired the most. Like there are still responses I've seen popping up on that thread. Yeah, and that video aired so long ago. It feels
a real credit to everyone. There was on the Stephen and Amethyst comment, and I think I've got that the right way around. There was just some name calling and some profanity, so we blocked that person.
There was someone who was being directly mean or unkind.
Yeah, and abusive.
So anybody can say anything and have any opinion in our comment section. But if you're directly insulting one of our listeners, even as one of our listeners, you are immediately the problem, and we will block you. I gave the person 2 honest chances to stop doing it. And when they continue to be like, well, they're an idiot, I'm like, great, okay, cool, goodbye, and they can no longer comment on our videos.
And it just made me want to give a real shout out. It was Jeeves in capital letters. So there were other people, and last time I looked, and probably are other people now. But that initial discussion, just a real shout out to Eric Torres, Jeeves, and Ship Show for just being friendly and nice.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that is like I felt like such a parent that day, like scolding a bad naughty child with that person, because I at one point I think I remember going into the Discord and being like, this isn't any of you guys, right? Like, yeah, like someone own up to this if it's you, but dear Lord.
To be fair, I think I then quoted like Spider-Man or something. Great power.
Yeah, dear Lord.
Great responsibility. So anyway, right, let's get, because we've wasted like 10 minutes. Well, not wasted. We've done some important stuff, some important admin. But let's get to the shipping.
Let's get to the ship show.
No, to be fair, like I will, in case Eric Torres is listening, going, well, it wasn't meant to be a ship thing. Apologies that's kind of the term that's ended up being associated.
Again, that's absolutely my fault. 100% me. This is honestly, it's all on me.
So what he's saying, and I can't read this all out, but please, it's the Zach Callison interview. Please go check it out and read essay, full kind of comment on it, because it's really, really interesting. So basically, what Eric is saying is that Steven and Connie is the worst pairing in Steven universe. The problem with the arc is that it's treated Connie's feelings about Steven's decision more seriously than those feelings warranted. So basically, Eric goes on to say that Connie is completely new to the world of the gems. The gem empire is dangerous. They commit genocide routinely. Their power spans galaxies. Connie's feelings are based on her delusion that by standing together, she and Steven could have defeated Aquamarine and driven her from the planet with little or no trouble. But Steven knew better because of his gem stuff, because of his knowledge of them. He knew that wasn't the case, and that he had to do what he did. Some battles can't be won. Connie may know how to fight, but she doesn't yet know when to fight. The fact that Steven made an adult decision, and basically saying that the relationship, that kind of moment, highlights why there's a relationship don't really fit. Ship Show then kind of came back with Connie's position is on the very strong assumption that Aquamarine was unbeatable. Remember, Stevonnie was able to more than hold their own against Jasper, and force her to retreat. If so, Connie has a legitimate reason to want to fuse and fight. So just this really kind of nice notion and interesting thought of, are they actually the couple? Or are they in fact one of, as Eric says, one of the worst pairings on the show? And then their next comment was about Steven and Amethyst, but let's just talk Steven and Connie for a second.
Yeah, so my immediate... It's interesting, actually, because my immediate thought on that seems like I'm disagreeing, but turns out I'm not. It's really weird, because my first thought when I read that, and this was a really interesting process, I went, well, no, that's obviously just that Steven isn't communicating correctly with Connie, because if Steven was doing so, she'd understand all that stuff. And then I went, yeah, but if two people aren't communicating correctly, they probably shouldn't be in a relationship. So I actually kind of... It was weird, because, in my head, that thought process was me disagreeing when I initially read these comments. And then I went, actually, no, because in a weird way, I've just proven Eric right. Because I've just basically gone... They're not communicating correctly, which is exactly the problem. In that very specific scenario, in that particular storyline, the Aquamarine comes to Earth, Steven lets Connie down by leaving without her, then the whole disagreement that follows that in that little mini arc throughout that bomb. Certainly in that portion of episodes, they are designed to be... They're designed to be not getting on. They're designed to be having that problem. But what I think is important, though, I will say, is after that arc, we have to now see how it plays out. Is Steven going to be more forthright with Connie and explaining the context of everything so that Connie doesn't find herself not really understanding the gravity of a situation in future? And if he does, then they've learned from their previous experience. And I will say another thing about really good couples is that they learn from when things go wrong and improve and get better and are more forthcoming with each other. No couple is immediately perfect when they come together. There's a reason why I think it's different for everybody, but I find with my friends and the relationships I've witnessed happening around me, there's usually a breaking point for everyone when relationships, when they start and the two people don't know each other that well and they're still doing shit like this, basically, where they're not communicating properly or there's some other issue. At a certain point, you sort of break through that barrier and it either breaks the relationship down completely and it doesn't continue, or you sort of get out the other side of it having learned, and then the relationship generally stabilizes. The first couple of years of my current relationship with Nadia has been with the rockiest by far, but I've now been with her nearly 15 years. And there was a point in which we suddenly realized, hey, we're not really arguing ever now because we've come to that understanding. We've developed that relationship. So what I'm saying is, even though I actually agree I agree 100% with in that scenario, you're right, they're not a great pairing. My question is, and the reason I think maybe, is it not designed to be that early stage of relationship where two people aren't quite gelling for whatever reason, and they're having these occasional spats, and then eventually that sort of works out when they get a closer relationship, and they work on each other, and they both get better together.
Well, I think it's interesting, and James S., who's just again proving that the ships they talked about in their post on, because James S. commented on last week's YouTube video, last week's video on theories, and they talk about Stephen and Connie, and they say again, I don't really see where this relationship could go from where they are now. I would call it romantic insofar as a relationship between children can be romantic. Doesn't really seem like there's much potential there for me. And I think that's a really interesting point. I think the thing is I'm a big fan of love, and that's why I kind of shipped Stephen and Connie. But the more they've done things recently, they've even referred to each other as best friends, and the more it feels like a friendship, friends having adventures together and fighting together. Say Lars and Sadie get jealous at the idea of each other talking to other people. Lars and Sadie Lars gets angry when he thinks that Sadie's moved on. They've had that kiss. Like, that feels more romantic than what they've done with Stephen and Connie. And actually, it's really weird because I'm kind of conflicted. I'm like, well, what is the better point that I want the show to make? Do I want to see a romance blossom because I love the love stories, or do I want to see a show go, men and women can be best friends? And I know lots of shows have done that, but it's always a really nice message. It's a message that I think has actually surprisingly taken a few years to be as mainstream. At uni, I wrote a script where the whole point of the script was that the guy and the girl were best friends. Like, there was nothing romantic at all. They were just best friends. And the marks I got for it, and I fully admit I could have just written it badly. I'm not blaming the lecturer for this. But on the mark sheet, the lecturer was like, I don't understand why you didn't put these two together at the end of the script. And I'm like, because they're not meant to be together. And again, could be my bad writing. But what do I
thought it was a great script, by the way.
I don't think you read that one, did you? That was first year, I think. Oh, possibly.
Didn't we do a trade? Didn't we all just exchange scripts on that
Possibly.
project?
Yeah, no, but if it was first year, I don't know if you
I'm thinking of a completely different script then. I'm thinking of the...
Yeah.
Yes, I am thinking of a very different script. Carry on.
Yeah. I think you're thinking of a script which is meant to put them together, so maybe I just can't get it right. Or couldn't then, at least. And so I don't know if the friendship angle is a more interesting one for Stephen and Connie. I think, or it could be, I was quite surprised, and mild spoilers, they veer off it towards the end, but there's a few episodes of Sabrina, the new Netflix one, where they do a really good job of absolutely convincing you that she is absolutely categorically in love with Harvey, but also still slightly confused about her feelings for this other guy who's more on the witch side of things. And you don't ever think she's an arse and think she's treating Harvey unfairly. You just kind of get that the other guy represents something a little bit different. And I don't know if they could do something like that, where they force those two characters to really think about whether they're friends or more. I think it's fascinating.
It is interesting. And the thing that struck me when you were speaking then, when I was sort of trying to pass my thoughts on whether it's, do you want just the friendship or do you want the relationship? And then you were talking about how like the Lars and Sadie thing has been a bit more explicit, and it certainly has. I think that's just indicative of their age. I get the impression that Stephen and Connie... what I read from the Stephen and Connie relationship is that they have both, at least at some point, felt romantically sort of affectionate for the other. Maybe not necessarily at the exact same time as each other. And because when you're younger, you're not really sure what relationships are and how they work, you might not necessarily sort of see it for what it is or understand your feelings, fully. And with Stephen and Connie, it's also confused because obviously they're both going through a lot in terms of they're not normal kids just hanging out at school where the thing that the most important thing they have to worry about is bloody, what am I having for lunch, or, oh, this other kid at school was mean to me or whatever. There's life and death stuff happening around them all the time. So you've got to imagine that there's an element of they've sort of had to put some of that stuff aside. This is just me giving my sort of interpretation of the relationship as it stands. And I think what I like the idea of is, because you were talking about your ideal version of this, like you can't decide whether you want the friendship or the relationship or the romantic relationship. I kind of like the idea that at the end of all this, when everything settles and the show is sort of, when in the main narrative thrust of the situation with Homeworld is resolved, because you've got to assume that's where it's going ultimately, Steven would then turn to sort of maybe examine those feelings more. Because you've got to keep in mind as well, this is the character. Steven is a character that tried to completely end his friendship with Connie when he, in full disclosure, when he got scared that it was getting too dangerous to have her around. Would it not surprise you to discover that he's had feelings for her the whole time, but he's suppressed them and not really dealt with them because, one, they're a little bit confusing because he's so young, but two, because he was following that logic again of like, we can't make this a thing, because what if I don't come out of this gem stuff, in one piece?
Yeah, maybe, but I think if that was going to be a big feeling for him, he also wouldn't go into battle with her and be keen for her to learn how to fight and, Steve Oni and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but do you not think that maybe, like, there's an element of, I don't want to start a relationship with someone when either of us might not come out of this alive?
Maybe. Well, or the other argument, let's refer to Eric's other comment. So, Steven and Amethyst would be the best romantic couple. So, Eric talks about here how Amethyst and Steven have a similarity in that they're both a stranger kind of gem who only knows Earth. Amethyst was one of the, and again, I'm pulling out key points. Check out the Zach Callison interview to read the full comment. Amethyst was the only one of the three gems to have opened up to him as early as Tiger Millionaire. He completes her and she completes him, both the advantages of freedom and the disadvantages of lack of impossible odds. And then Garnet and Pearl have looked into the real face of war and were forever changed by it, but there's kind of Amethyst and Steven aren't in that situation. Yeah. Wait, I'm worried that I've... Oh, hold on. Sorry. That last comment there was a comment... Sorry, yeah. Right, the end of that sentence was... I turned the page over when I should have turned to my new page. So he completes her and she completes him. Both the advantages of freedom and the disadvantages of lack of structure manifested in Amethyst. Meaning Steven inspired the growth for Amethyst, where she can understand where she's from and can choose the flexibility she embodies rather than that having to be a symptom of floundering. I accidentally went back to the Steve and Connie stuff a second ago. So yeah, basically they're saying about how they're there for each other. So what's interesting, and also, hold on, even though the episode Steven versus Amethyst was a source of tension between them, it also represents where they bonded and got a new start. Amethyst in the past, she wouldn't have had the emotional resources to help someone who's suffering, especially when connecting it to a place she has such a complicated relationship with. But after meeting Steven, she has learned she's allowed to be proud of where she came from. I'd never thought about those two as a pairing in that way, until this comment. I think there's some interesting notions there. I think it's interesting. I think it's possible. I think it could be very telling that Connie and Amethyst are the two people he's fused with. I think it's certainly true that they have a relationship in a different way to the one he has with Garnet and Pearl. I think it feels more equal, shorty squad, all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Whether it is a romantic one, I'm not sure. Because Amethyst is so kind of aloof.
I think, and you can't. Well, no, you carry on. Sorry, I'll let you finish what you're saying.
Well, I think there's an element I kind of feel, maybe I'm going to be wrong, but I kind of feel like if all of this would go away, Amethyst would kind of miss the fight a little bit, whereas I think Steven would be quite happy to sit back and watch TV. Then again, they've shown Amethyst getting obsessed with television. So I just don't know, Dan. I don't know what to make of this one, but I think it's fascinating. Genuinely,
it is really interesting. It is a very interesting position to take, and I totally understand how someone would land there. But I think this is where you draw the line between a relationship and a romantic relationship. Are Stephen and Amethyst a great pairing in terms of a strong, just human-to-human bond on a basic relationship level? Not a relationship like a romantic one, but an actual just two people. Absolutely. Amethyst is by far the gem he has the most in common with and works the best with. There's a reason he fused with her before he's fused with Pearl or Garnet. They have a huge amount in common, as pointed out in that comment, and it definitely makes them a very, very strong pairing. What I think it is reasonable to therefore go to a place of relationship with it. But for me, the show has never given any evidence that it is any more than just a very strong bond between two humans, not humans, two beings, rather than anything romantic. There's been no indication of romance between them, whereas they have very much, for lack of a better word, coded Stephen and Connie with the tropes of a couple. You know, they've had the she's not texting me back thing, and
of course, that whole arc was like pure teenage romance,
and then they and moments like when they came down and watched the snow together. There's been an inherently romantic vibe to several of Stephen and Connie's scenes. There's also been several friendshipy scenes too, like the whole jam buds thing or whatever. I'm not denying that, but what I'm saying is there have been some of that with Stephen and Connie, whether intentional or not on the writer's part. There has been, in my opinion, and again, this is purely my opinion, none of that for Stephen and Amethyst. So what that leads me to, personally, when I think about those two, is that they are, and nothing written about those two and their strength together is incorrect. Absolutely 100% right that they are. There's a reason those two have a stronger bond, in my opinion, than Stephen does with Pearl and Garnet. Without a question, without a shadow of a doubt, that is why. Whether that's romantic or not is where the theory sort of loses me. Just because there has been nothing within the context of the show that I have seen as the show, because the way that storytelling works is you have to give the audience, if you're leading the audience down a path, if you're taking the audience on a journey, you need the first steps, and the show has not given us those. You would not necessarily be incorrect to be reading it that way, but for me, if you've seen those steps somewhere in the coding of the show or the writing of the show, I don't know, maybe, but for me, I haven't seen that. That's where I stand on the Amethyst thing. I don't disagree with the workings out. I maybe disagree with the conclusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a great counter, and actually brings us on to the next one. So thank you, huge thanks again to Eric, for Eric's. I'm so conscious of it now, even though I think
Eric, it makes it worse. I think it makes it worse that we've been called out on it, because I think that's
but everyone was completely right to call us out on it. So.
I know, I'm not disagreeing, but that is the downside to it, is that then you become self-conscious of it, and then you do it. It gets so much worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, guys. Bear with us.
Yeah, and it's just getting used to using names and they and stuff. So James S. Sorry. Thank you, Eric, for the comments. So James S. on YouTube. His first one. Oh no, it's James. I don't think anyone would moan at me for assuming that James was male. But if I've got that wrong, James S., I apologise. So I shouldn't assume. I'm overthinking it, Dan. I need to.
That's what I mean. Like, that's exactly what I was referring to in the last one, which is like when someone calls it out, which is reasonable, and I'm not saying they're wrong to do that, but being aware of it does make you like way more likely to fuck it up.
But you know what? But I don't think there's, in a way, I don't think there's, and this is a society thing. In a way, I don't think there's anything wrong with fucking it up, because fucking it up shows that you're trying. Not trying is the problem. Do you know what I mean? Not trying to get better.
Oh yeah, 100%. The people that are just like, so what? I called him he and he wants to be a she. He's a he and me. Yeah, what you gonna do about it? I don't know why I made this guy like New York or something. What you gonna do about it? Like, but that guy's the dickhead. Like,
I'm walking here.
anyone who's trying to like trying to get it right and making the effort, I think deserves.
So you know what? I'm gonna own up. I'm gonna own up and be fair. Be proud of me getting it wrong and fucking up and overthinking it down, because it means I'm trying. So I agree. So James S. So James's first one is a really interesting one because it's one that caused a big discussion in the discourse. So in the Discord, in particular, Kat was a big fan of this pairing. Yes, Kat, we're doing it. We're going there. Lapidot. So James says fans have been shipping this since Peridot's first appearance in the show.
Sorry, can I clarify?
No, sorry, I've got that wrong.
I've
got that completely wrong. Right, we're gonna go to Cats first. So it's not Lapidot. Sorry, it's because everyone's using like ship names, and I'm getting confused. Right.
Yeah, I was going to say that wasn't
We'll
Cats
talk
at
about
all.
Cats first. Yeah. So Cat.
Wait,
is
so we just gave
Lapis
wait a
and
second.
Pearl.
We just gave James like an intro. And then you threw Cat's name in casually, and now we're switching to Cat's one. Come on, we'll get to it. Like, you were talking about James first. Let's do.
There's so many ships to get through, Dan.
I know.
James S. Lapidot. Fans have been shipping this since Peridot's first appearance in the show, well before it made any sense. Since then, a lot has happened between Lapis and Peridot, and much of their character development has centered around their relationship. Following Raising the Barn, we've had a number of moments where each of them is dealing with the emotional difficulties caused by their separation. Now that they've reunited, we need to have an episode dealing with the rift in their relationship.
Yes.
What form would it take? I don't know. Do you guys have any ideas? So
really cool.
I was really resisting.
By the way, that was very funny. Way before it even made sense. You're not wrong. I enjoyed that very much. I don't remember reading that with you when I saw these original comments, but that's made me chuckle. So thank you for the laugh.
Fans have been shipping this since Peridot's first appearance in the show, well before it made any sense.
Yeah, great.
Love it. So I resisted shipping Lapis and Peridot for quite a while.
But is that not because of a small personal bias you at the time had, because you were quite into the idea of Amethyst and Peridot?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to say. Yeah,
okay, sorry.
That's exactly why. Yeah. It makes more and more sense, but again, I don't know, because they've been sort of painted as like the odd couple, the barn mates, the bicker. They bicker, but they what I love is they have their own relationship. They have their own language, and often couples do that, and it's really sweet and really cool. And I really like that. I love her little hi, like her as she came back.
And I kind of like that they're mismatched in a weird way. I think there's a temptation in television to put people together that are like, oh, these like it was exactly what we were talking about with the Steve and Connie thing. The logic that Eric was using to sort of say actually Steven's better suited to Amethyst was more about like what they have in common. And while there are a lot of relationships I'm familiar with in real life and in fiction that depend on the two characters having either a shared history or a shared perspective that makes them quite similar people. And I don't think that's uncommon. It certainly happens a lot. But I do also find there's a fair bit of the other. You know, I know a few couples that you're just like, how are you two a thing? Like, it's just... Like, if you're working under the very sort of stringent logic that the people in a relationship need to be somewhat similar, there are so many couples out there that completely disprove that, you know.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever done it where you've said that to... Because I've done it. I've said to someone, like, it was a friend's sister was dating someone, and I was like, oh, is it not a bit weird that, like, she's with him? And he just went, why would that be weird? Like... Why would that be weird? They're both good people. And I felt, and this, I was young, I was like fucking 15 or whatever, and I felt so small, and I felt so like, oh shit, like, of course they should. Why on earth could any two people not be together? Like, and it's just that stereotypical. They didn't, like you say, they appeared mismatched, but actually they worked. They're still together. And I was a dick.
We've all thought it though. We've thought to people, and when I think of it, when I go, really, them too. I just think like where that comes from when I'm thinking it is surprise that they sort of had enough in common initially to spark it. That's my surprise. I understand two people that spend enough time together could absolutely sort of, regardless of their initial sort of surface level differences, could find commonality and could find love. I sometimes wonder how they sort of had to sort of spend enough time together initially to sort of explore that. Does that make sense? That's where my surprise sometimes comes from.
There are also elements you never see. Like I always say that I think Jess is so beautiful and so, you know, it is so clear to me that if for someone to look at Jess and I and go, man, she's so much better looking than him. But honestly, I've got the better personality. And you know, those two things, they just gel for that reason.
So what you're saying is that Jess brings the looks to the table, and you're bringing the personality to the table.
I am of course joking. No, I'm absolutely joking.
She's a lucky girl, isn't she? Really. Be playing this clip at your fucking wedding, mate. Don't you worry.
Oh, I've made that joke plenty of times.
On a serious note, though, in relation to this, so personal opinions about relationships, like in general aside, my point, what I was getting to, was what I kind of like about Lapis and Peridot is that, and because I'm always more impressed by those couples, you know, when they've you know, like the way they've sort of found each other in a world likely to judge that they might or shouldn't be together. So I kind of loved that they've. I mean, through circumstance, sure, they've kind of been forced together, really, through the barn, and Lapis certainly made it clear at the start she really didn't particularly want to share the barn with Peridot. Peridot didn't particularly want to share the barn with Lapis, but what I love is that they found this relationship, regardless of whether it's romantic or not. Again, just to talk more generally, they found some comfort in each other, and I think that's really sweet. And I think, despite them seeming like an unsuitable pairing, you know, that they've been mismatched, I kind of think that's adorable, and I kind of like that. Whereas the Peridot Amethyst relationship felt very much based on Peridot being sort of in awe of Amethyst a bit, and almost really respecting Amethyst, because Amethyst should be different, should be bigger, but doesn't care. And I think Peridot admired that about Amethyst, because Peridot, when she got to Earth, was so hung up on gem society stuff, and Amethyst just flew in the face of all of that. Despite being in, I think, was it Peridot that pointed out that technically shouldn't Amethyst have been?
Yeah, that was a big thing
in
for
charge.
A while, yeah, that she was
technically the
higher gem,
technically the higher class gem. And I think that's really interesting that, like, so she, you know, because Amethyst, arguably, in the dynamic of the crystal gems, in terms of the sort of hierarchy, you would argue is on the lower end. She's younger, she's less experienced, she often does what Pearl and Garnet are advising, you know. So I think when Peridot got to Earth, I think she was in awe of Amethyst, and it may have even been romantic. But I think that's happened to all of us as well, where there's no one on this earth that hasn't met someone, had a very brief sort of infatuation is the wrong word, but like a brief sort of period of time when they felt romantically interested in a person, that they've then gotten to know and gone, no, that was based on something different. It was, I don't think I understood my feelings as well as I thought I did about this person. I am very fond of this person, but it's not as clean cut as maybe I thought. So I do think maybe there's a chance that Peridot and Amethyst was more romantic for a minute in Peridot's, but I think maybe as she learned about Earth and Earth culture and like the way that the crystal gems are living, maybe she realized a little bit later on that her interest in Amethyst was purely based on respect for Amethyst and for just outright flying in the face of all that Peridot knew to be true. Like, she just respected that Amethyst just didn't seem to care about any of the gem societal norms, and I think she kind of, that represented something very important to Peridot as she learned about Earth. Because I think that's what Peridot wanted to strive for. I think Peridot wanted to be Amethyst. I think that was like with children, when there's an older child, the younger child tries to copy the older child because they want to be like them. It was maybe a little bit like that. That's how I saw their relationship. So they're moving back to Peridot and Lapis. I think they've grown. Whether they're going to be a relationship romantically or not, I don't know. But I tell you what, they are going to continue to be one of the strongest friendships on the show for me. I love watching those two interact. I think the comfort they found in each other, because they're sort of weirdly outcasts in their own way. Even from the Crystal Gems, they're not necessarily a full part of the crew yet. Maybe that will change now. But I liked that they were both sort of slightly on the fringe, but on the fringe together.
James S. actually brings up the romantic aspect himself in the comment. He says, I'm highly skeptical of the romantic aspect of Lapis and Peridot's relationship. I know almost nothing about writing for television, so I'm very curious about what people more knowledgeable about the subject might think. It appears to me that the romance between Lapis and Peridot has always been implicit and not explicit. That is the exact nature of their relationship. It's open to interpretation. Certain things can be interpreted romantically, but just as reasonably are between friends, which I think is a really interesting point.
That's 100% true. Like I said earlier about like coding the relationship, Stephen and Connie have had more overtly romantic content in this show than Lapis and Peridot by a mile, 100%. Yeah. And I think that there is a lot of fans putting that on the relationship. With that said, though, they are close enough that if the show wished to turn down that road narratively, they wouldn't have to work very hard to make it believable. So maybe by setting up a strong friendship, they are ultimately leading us down the path of a relationship. They have not overtly done so yet, but it would absolutely work. And I'm sorry I've ranted about this for long enough. I will let you move on, Chris. Sorry. I had a lot more to say on that one than the previous ones.
No, well, to be honest with you, the next few I think will be quite quick because I'm conscious of time, and there's one pairing that's come up in the Discord that we've never really discussed. But whereas these next few we have discussed. But James S. says, Pearl and Mystery Girl, one of the core focuses of Pearl's character, as well as what I believe to be one of the show's strongest elements, has been her ongoing struggle with grieving the loss of Rose. Yeah. She comes a long way in overcoming that grief, and I think her moving on with someone else will be the final step in that journey. In Last One Out of Beach City, there is an explicit romance attraction expressed on Pearl's part towards Mystery Girl. Now, it seems to me the intention was to set up a character for Pearl to enter into a romantic relationship with at some point in the future. This creates an opportunity to explore a grieving woman moving on from the death of a past partner and learning to love again. A wonderful opportunity for an emotional and real story. Okay. Couldn't agree with that more. I think of all the relationship pairings I want to see more of, it's these two. Like, I really want them to explore.
I'm starting to change my mind on it. I'm so sorry.
Why is that?
The more I think about it, the more I think it doesn't actually help Pearl move on. The visual similarities between the characters, it would feel like to me now. I think if she'd looked like anyone else, I think I wouldn't mind. But I'm not sure it's moving on. If you're gonna,
but maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the story. You have her enter a relationship, and she's the Mystery Girl's the rebound. She doesn't really move on. She is too much like Rose, and then it's ultimately a step
that's not
in the path to take us to another relationship.
But that wasn't
could be one we'll discuss later.
But that's what. But yes, I'm all on board for that. But that's not necessarily what the commenter was describing. The commenter in the question there was describing, that Mystery Girl, or potentially was it Sabine? Is that what we thought? Sabrina? What did we think her name was?
I can't remember.
It was from that offhand comment from Kevin, wasn't
it?
Anyway,
I think it is Sabine. Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, if the problem for me is, I think I actually I think it's actually maybe even a more important story for Pearl's character when we next explore Mystery Girl, it's from the perspective of, no, I didn't call her, I didn't need to, I'm moving on. That's almost more powerful to me.
Yeah, from a story point of view, but there'll be so many people, and I think I count myself as one of them, that would be disappointed that we
Honestly?
kind of have we've had all these months of let's explore that more, let's see that.
That's
more.
Cartoon Network's fault.
Yeah,
we've had a lot longer to mull over this than we should have had.
I agree with James though. I think there was so much spark there, and there was so much obvious attraction to Pearl. From Pearl's side of things, that I do want to see that explored. Like, I want to see that kind of relationship explored.
As did I until quite recently, and I really started thinking about it recently and was just like, no, I actually think it would be more powerful for the character to have her sort of be like, look, I'm very intentionally moving on from Rose, and therefore that can't really be a thing. And I would respect that a lot, and I think that would be still a really good story, and it would definitely involve that character. That character would need to return to tell that story, I think. But I think I would get more out of that relationship helping push Pearl forward. Personally,
yeah, fair enough.
Personally,
James goes on to say Ruby and Sapphire, seeing as these two are now married, it would seem their arc is complete. I don't really know where the creators could take their relationship from here, or if there's any need to develop it further. I don't think we should talk too much about Ruby and Sapphire, because we have done over the course of the show. Maybe we can do a whole episode dedicated on just them later.
Because they're an overt relationship. We discuss their relationship whenever it becomes a part of the plot, so it's not really worth us going into too much detail.
But I will say, though, I think there is more you could do with them. For me, that if I was sort of, for some reason, given the task or given the question, what would you now do with Ruby and Sapphire? I think they're so strong as a unit now, and they separated in a voluntary way and found each other again and went back to each other. I think the next thing to do with them from a story point of view is separate them in an involuntary way, and you deal with how that affects both of them as individuals. Not just yet, because we've just had them separated, but like that's what you do. For me, that's what you do with them next. You tear them apart for reasons beyond their own choice and control, and you see how they both
diamonds separate them or something.
Yeah,
yeah.
Stephen and Connie, we have discussed. So from James's point of view, I would call it romantic insofar as a relationship between children can be romantic. And it's such a shame. I'm conscious of time, and we've discussed this pairing a lot. So we might have to do a separate episode just on them. But Lars and Sadie. So to give James's point of view, which actually is an interesting angle we potentially haven't discussed, a lot has happened to each of them since their separation. They will no doubt be reunited at some point, and when they are, they will need an entire episode to deal with it properly. What direction that takes, I have no idea. Perhaps as each of them has grown, they've also grown apart, and there's no longer a future with them together. Perhaps now that they've been able to grow so much as individuals, they are able to enter a healthy relationship they might not have been capable of before. What about Lars's position as captain of the
I'm honestly okay with
Off-Colours?
both of those scenarios.
Yeah, and James concludes it by saying, honestly, there are so many different directions they could take this. I've no idea what's going to happen. I think Lars and Sadie is a really interesting one. I think more than any other pairing, like Pearl and Mystery Girl, if you told me which way they went, whether it's them fully together or them not together, as we were discussing earlier, I would either myself go, oh, that's not the direction I want, that's a shame, or have someone, understand someone else saying, oh, that's not the direction I wanted, that's a shame. With Lars and Sadie, I think whatever they did, even if I was disappointed, I would still, more than anything, go, I trust what they're going to do with those two characters explicitly. So it's almost like the one where I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever happens, I think I will feel it's the right thing to happen.
Because the writing on their relationship has been so consistently good that I think whatever they want to do with it next, because I think both are completely valid. I think that's what's really. I think the did you say it was James? That was still James's comment, I assume.
Yeah, and then there was quite a funny sign off from James. James's comment ends. P.S. It sounds like bingo is exactly the same in the UK as it is in the US.
There you go. We've learned something new. Good. Excellent. I think what James actually very succinctly done there is really lay out the two most likely scenarios for that relationship to go in by far in a very clean way. One is that they, having grown separately, can now take that next step, come together and be a healthy sort of couple, or they've grown enough that they realize that they don't need to be codependent anymore, and they can move on with their lives. And I think both are interesting to me for different reasons. Seeing them together would be satisfying in the moment, but I don't know where it goes from there. Other than just that they're then together and their stories individually continue, but they're now a couple and they work together as a unit on the various challenges that face them. But the challenges that face them now are so separate. Lars being a space captain of a band of off-colored gems. God, could you imagine telling these words to Could you imagine this someone listening to this podcast who has only seen like a handful of episodes of this show? They'd be like, "Wait, Lars a space captain? It's so ridiculous." I love it, but it's so ridiculous. They've got such different issues. I think for me the more interesting one is have them have grown enough to go, we don't need to be codependent anymore. We'll stay friends, but we don't. This doesn't need to be a thing, and they could move on. Even though in my heart, I don't want that at all. I want them to be together. I think I don't know why. I like my gut instinct is no, put them together now. But I think when my writer brain jumps out of my head and is like, "Psst, Dan, no, think about the story implications. It's not really going to add much. You'll be satisfied, but it won't add much unless they put them together right at the end of the show or towards the end of the show." I don't know what we get out of that. Whereas I think them just mutually deciding to sort of go their own ways is probably the more interesting angle. So logic versus heart there on those two options. So I don't know which way the writers will go.
Yeah, but I also feel if they do go a separate ways one, I feel like we got a kiss. I feel like we did still get a fair amount of joy from that. We got to
explore it. Yeah, you're right.
And they're in such different positions now, as James outlines. So thank you, James. So let's give the cat pairing. This is probably the last one we'll go deep dive on. Goodness knows whether we even do the jokey ones next episode, looking at the time. But Cat, we're going to talk about it. So there was a lot of conversation about this one in the Discord. So this is Lapis and Pearl. One of Cat's comments is, my favourite kind of ship is the kind where two broken people find each other and they heal themselves together. Not only are their aesthetics similar, they two very flowy, elegant, water-associated characters with blue as a major colour motive, but they have the two most tragic backstories of anyone on the show. Trapped in a terrible position after being forced into it by someone else, forever longing for something they can never have again, with a tendency to run away from feelings that plague them, extremely protective of those that they care about. So the biggest, or one of the cruxes of the big kind of counter-argument to this was that they've not actually spent that much time together. And that's where my head first of all went, and I was a bit like, oh, well, we've not really seen any kind of evidence of that, despite some beautiful, and a lot were posted, some beautiful drawings of the two of them together and stuff. So there's some wonderful fan art for this pairing in particular. So thank you and shout out to Kat for posting all of that. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, that does make sense. And I do think they could do a lot with it from a story point of view.
See, that's where I landed. That's where I landed. Like right now, it's the work the show has put into that relationship is thin, if not non-existent. But I think what Kat is getting at is a potentially fascinating relationship that I would, if the show decided to explore it, would be happy to have a sit down and watch some episodes sort of examining 100%. I think that they would be a really interesting couple to see come together. Currently the show has put zero work into that, we're not really talking about a relationship that's necessarily at this stage plausible, if that's the line. But if we're simply just talking about ships that would be interesting to explore or watch, or characters that maybe would fit together in an interesting way, then 100%, Cat's winning, with just an interesting choice of ship there, 100%, because I would be fascinated to see how that would work, both socially and on a deeper level. Like seeing them interact like with the rest of the group as like in a more coupley way, like would be an interesting thing to watch in of itself. But seeing how a relationship like that would form, how that bond would form, and where it would go as they sort of became interested in each other, that I would absolutely watch that 100%.
Yeah, it's really difficult because now we've discussed it. I really want Pearl and Mystery Girl to get together, and it'd be great. But then it'd be just like a moving on thing and a lessons for Pearl to learn thing, and then Pearl and Lapis ultimately end up together.
Yeah, I mean that's how you would have to do it to make this work.
But then you've got the Peridot and Lapis stuff as well.
And I think
it's such a minefield.
And I think
all of this.
I mean, like for me, that's the only crux in the Pearl situation is that I think Peridot currently has a much better dynamic with Lapis because of the amount of time the writers have put into them. So I think the edge is with Peridot right now in terms of likely actual direction of the story would take, which is a shame for those who are interested in seeing the Pearl Lapis be a ship, be a thing, be a real sort of thing in the show. I do think it's unlikely at this stage, but again, not that I would not be interested in seeing it happen.
I think it's a fascinating combination, and I think it really, I do kind of get where Kat's coming from. I do now just really want to see it, and I just think that of all the potential, like theories is one thing, but when you talk about the fun thing and interesting thing about talking about ships is you're not just talking about theoretical moments. It's like what stories could they do, and of all the story potentials we've discussed, the notion of Lapis and Pearl is one of the most interesting story potentials for me, and it's like, I really want to see.
Yeah, because with a lot of the relationships,
it's not because I crush on both of them, It's not just 'cause of that.
Oh god, yeah, that's Chris's ultimate ship. I'm just put that together. Dear Lord. No wonder you were talking about the beautiful fan art. Dear Lord, right?
Well, that's made that weird and creepy.
I know. I couldn't help myself. It was too funny an idea. I think what's interesting actually there, and I think the reason that like that's a very easy to gravitate towards ship is when you talk about all the other relationships we've discussed, them being together is kind of the end game. Because you just sort of go, well, once they're together, they're together. That's kind of that story like wrapped up in a bow because then they're together. Whereas I think with Lapis and Pearl, it would be like they're together. Now what? Like, you know what I mean? Like now the story begins. Like, they found each other. Let's explore that. Like, I think there's more active stuff to explore once they're together with those two than with some of the other ships we talked about today. That's for sure.
Yeah. So some quick fire ones.
Let's do it.
So it was funny, and I'm not necessarily Slaughter Round, Cram, Latty, and a bunch of other users in the Discord were really active at chucking names out for the sake of speed, and like it's all
It felt like some of you guys were trying to fuck us over with just the the sheer number of them. It was like some people posted lists of just. It felt like you just hit a random name generator for Steven Universe characters and gone those two.
And what's amazing is the reason I thank those guys and kind of anyone else. I'm just scanning through. Kat Fretzel commented a lot as well, not necessarily with names but discussion. The reason I bring that up is because it's, to be honest with you, I don't recognise some of the ship names and who the characters are, so I can't confuse things with ships and usernames. So thank you to everyone I've mentioned. Thank you to everyone for contributing. I will specifically mention Slaughter Round though, because I got tagged in a post. So there was talk of, and again we are now on the Quickfire, so there was talk of Pearl and Amethyst, and then there was talk of Opal, so their fusion, and Jasper. With Slaughter Round saying, if shipping Pearl/Amethyst means we get Opal back, then so be it. Opal and Jasper have such potential, but we've seen hardly any of either of them. Jasper usually being a bog-standard bad guy with her depth forgotten about, and Opal being practically being deceased. And then Slaughter Round tagged me and put, "You best mention Opal, mister." So Slaughter Round, this is me mentioning Opal.
I agree. You know what? I'm on board. I miss Opal too. I Opal absolutely the first fusion we saw, there was something so magical about Opal in those few brief moments, and I can't decide whether I love that Opal as a character just lives as that magical first glimpse into the wonderful, weird world of fusion, and we've not really explored it. So is Opal best as just a representative of the idea really early on, or is Opal? I mean, I suppose that's a discussion for another day. Or is Opal? Does Opal deserve to come back and have episodes and stories so we could explore that more? The Amethyst and Pearl relationship, I mean, I think that episode itself makes it very clear that those two are unsuited. They find commonality in the end in wanting to save Stephen, but I think they are diametrically opposed, and I think that makes their friendship actually more the stronger, because you sort of go, it's kind of amazing that they work so well together when they do get on the same page, but they've disagreed and been separate too many times, I think, on different sides too many times, really, for it to be a viable ship for me.
Fair enough. I will say a note I found that I didn't say, by the way, Pearl/Lapis, aka Saltwater or Broken Bird. Cram mentioned Saltwater, Cat mentioned Broken Bird. Which do you prefer, Dan, as a name for that ship?
Oh, God.
I like Lurl.
Broken Bird's got something. There's something kind of weirdly elegant, but also defining about Broken Bird. Saltwater's funny, but Broken Bird is like this. It feels really appropriate, and also kind of like there's an elegance to it which fits the characters more, I think, if I'm forced to choose.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, let's
Bird
go
Mom.
Quickfire. Here we go. Kiki and Ronaldo.
Please do that immediately.
Ronaldo and Jane. Who's Jane, for fuck's sake?
That's his actual girlfriend.
Oh yeah, right, fine. Yeah, ship them. Ronaldo seems into Jane.
I really liked that episode. Like that wasn't that when we discovered the best use of Ronaldo was just to sort of like make him a side part of the story rather than the focus.
Yeah. I'm right. Forget Kiki. I'm all for Ronaldo and Jane. Lady from Best Diner in the World and waiter at Crab Shack / receptionist at EC Hotel.
Characters characters we've only seen once is my answer.
I don't know any of these. Skinny and Carnelian.
Oh, okay, yeah, they're two of the Amethyst.
Oh, right, okay.
So Amethyst's like little family she found. I mean, fine, yeah, cool. We don't know them well enough to really know, but like, if they decided that was the way I'd be up for that. Like, if the Amethyst came back and a couple of them were together, like, cool.
Yeah, that's cool. This is one of my favourite bits of the Discord. Cram put, there's probably like a smoky quartz and sardonyx chipper out there, and Anthony's just responded, don't like that.
I mean, I'm not a fan of that either, to be honest. I don't see how that functions. I like those two characters, and I like those two characters interacting as from that episode, but no, not as a relationship, I'm afraid.
Pewee. Who's that? Peridot and Mayor Dewey? Like,
maybe?
I don't know who Pewee is. Rufire, Pearlidot, Bismuth and Peridot.
Yes, this has come up a few times. People really like this idea now because, and I'll tell you what, I think it makes sense. The metal wielder, the person who forms these metal weapons and somebody who can bend metal essentially with their mind or move metal with their mind. I totally get that there's a weird sort of aesthetic, sort of there's an appealing aesthetic sort of power meshing there that people like, and also there was that moment in Reunited where Bismuth was caught Peridot, or like Peridot was all fiery, and Bismuth was like, "I like you, Peridot," and I would need to see more of them together for that to be a thing I'd want to explore further right now, because again we've just not seen enough of them. But if the show just, again, the same with Lapis and Pearl, if they started going that way now, I'd be on board with seeing how it played out. So that's another one that's in that camp for me. Like if the writers chose to go that way, I'd be totally interested in seeing where, how does that work going forward, and how does that affect their dynamic? And yeah, I'd be interested in seeing it. So
cool. I'm going to apologize because some of these I can't even say. Rhodonite and Padparacha?
Padparacha. We did this. Padparacha.
Right.
So Rhodonite and Padparacha obviously from the off colors. I quite like. I like Rhodonite as Rhodonite is. Again, I suppose because you know what it is. It's because there's the weird Garnet connection between those characters. Because there's that involves a ruby and a sapphire again. Essentially, that pairing, doesn't it? Because Rhodonite is if I'm remembering correctly, Rhodonite is a pearl and a ruby. So I suppose what you're essentially doing with those three together is doing a pearl, ruby, sapphire type relationship. I know they're individuals. I know they're not all interchangeable. I understand, but I'm saying like in terms of the dynamic of it, I think that's the reason people have maybe thought about putting those groups together, because I think they're essentially pulling ruby towards a sapphire again. Because I know that I know Padparacha isn't a sapphire. She's an off color. She's not a pure sapphire. She's a what do they say? A rare orange sapphire. I can't remember the exact phrasing.
I love that you've taken the suggestion very seriously. I mean, in the same comment, Cram has written Captain Lars and his crew. So I'm not sure it was necessarily thought through.
No, but I have seen various people talk about Padparacha and Rhodonite, and I think it's the link to Garnet. I think people are seeing a bit of Garnet in it because of the gem choices. You know, between I think the gems that make up Rhodonite plus Padparacha being a form of sapphire. I think that has led to people shipping where maybe there isn't anything there.
Right, okay.
Not that I wouldn't be against it. I just don't. Again, the off colors have, I think, a very specific role to play in the story going forward, and I don't know if we have enough space in the show to then start exploring their interrelationships too. Like, the show doesn't have enough real time for that. I don't think.
Right. So let's go back to the speed. Kevin and Kevin.
Obviously, I mean that guy wakes up and kisses a mirror every morning.
Kevin and Jamie.
Oh, yes, to that one. I would love to see that.
Dewey and Jamie. I think that one's a bit odd. Not Dewey and Jamie.
Yeah, not for me. I think
Buck and Sadie. I don't mind that one, actually.
Oh, no, I'd really like that. That'd be really sweet.
Buck and Jenny. I prefer Buck and Sadie.
Yeah, me too.
Lars and Jenny.
I look, if Lars isn't going to be with Sadie, I think Lars maybe would be better off sort of off in space, living a really exciting life.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want him being grounded to Earth if he's not going to be with Sadie.
Buck and Jenny and sour cream.
Oh, no, it's not.
Sadie Killer and all the suspects.
Again, I think the really like the slightly the ones that sound like. I'm not necessarily against. What was it? I suppose it'd be polygamy. Is that the right term I'm using for like a sort of like 4-way relationship like that, 3-way relationship like that? But no, I think no. I think for just storytelling purposes alone, you would want to keep it 1-on-1. But I think there are other questions that crop up if you make it a group, make it a group
which is
activity.
Which is therefore probably the answer for Greg and every Zooman.
I love that everyone has gone this route. These are amazing, by the way. I think everyone who's contributed to these slightly left field ones have been. Say slightly. Some of these are quite major.
I'm not reading them all out for time, but thank you for all of them. And Lati, Alexandra, and Greg is a pretty dumb one. I agree. This one contained an image. It's one of my favourite ones. Gruster, which is Greg and the cluster.
I didn't see that one. I'm gonna look that up. Where was that? Was that on the Discord?
Yeah, that was a link to a PNG from the SU shipping on crack.
I think there is very okay. I do think there's a chance I may have seen that and then been wary of clicking.
Yeah. So and that's from. Apologies if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Calata, so Calata.
It's worth noting with some of these ships, I think, that the people suggesting them were suggesting that there was a point when the conversation in the Discord turned to, what are some of the most ridiculous ships you've seen people push for? And people were going, oh, I've seen people say. So some of these aren't suggestions of ships people want to see. Just to clarify for listeners who haven't been reading the comments in the Discord or on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, because...
To clarify, not everyone has been suggesting these seriously. Some people have been going, oh, can you believe I saw somebody talking about this? Or, oh, it wouldn't be funny if, so no, they're not all serious.
I don't think for 1 second Cram was serious when he put Blue Diamond and Barn. But just to say, I
have missed some corkers. I've been very busy the last week or two, and I'm really sad now that I have missed some incredible comments.
Jamie and Garnet, Onion and White Diamond is good. But there's one. If you've missed this, it's amazing. So bearing in mind that this one comes with, let me just check it. Well, I'm sure this is certainly how I interpreted it. Because there's a picture of it. So I'm going to end on this one. So this one comes with a picture, right? Someone has drawn the two.
That alone is a scary thought.
So we're going to end here. Apologies if I've missed some, but we had a good fun. Link for the Discord below if anyone wants to join in the fun. This is one of my favourites. So this contains fan art. Sapphire, which is Sapphire and Fryman. Sapphire. I love that one. Did you see that one?
No, but that's great. I've got to dig that out. It's
Sapphire jumping into Fryman's arms. So it's the 13th of November at 8:24.
On the Discord, I guess.
On the Discord, yeah.
Which, by the way,
Note Taker just responded. Jesus. Oh wait, it might be because So Cram put Sapphire, and then Note Taker put Jesus. That pun hurts. And then a link, and it says, I drew a fusion of Fryman and Sapphire. So, oh, no, that was a fusion, so that's a different thing to the image I'm talking about. But, yeah, I don't know who drew the image. Apologies if I've just not screen-grabbed that.
This is a hell of an advert for our Discord, by the way. If you haven't joined the Discord yet and you listen to this podcast, you definitely should. It's a really friendly place to chat, mostly. I heard some people have... I said that last week, and I think at least one person was like... Yeah, there was this one time someone said this, and I was like, oh no, what did I miss?
Apologies. Yeah, I saw that, and apologies if that was something that we didn't see or spot or anything. But in general, it's just,
It's been a really
Sapphire.
nice place.
Why would you not want to join in the fun?
Yeah. So, I legitimately, because I nearly put a message in the Discord this morning that was like, we're recording the ship episode this morning, please stop. But then I thought, I don't want them to, because I know everyone seems to be having such fun.
Again, well, no. Keep doing it to your heart's content. But if there's one you genuinely want us to talk about, I will take a view on how if someone puts Blue Diamond and Barn talk ship, I'm gonna suspect that's not true. But if we've missed anything anyone meant genuinely, comment below on this video on YouTube or in the Discord. Use talk ship or one word. There we go.
Dear. Oh, that was
Sapphire,
so much fun.
Man.
A Sapphire,
Blue
Diamond and Barn. It's too good. That is too good. Like after the crash, Blue Diamond got up and was like, "Hello."
I mean, isn't the barn's technically destroyed at the moment, isn't it?
Who are you, big, brown and beautiful? Like tapping the wood.
No, but the barn's destroyed at the moment, isn't it?
Correct.
Well, there you go. Cat liked ships with broken relationships. A Lapis is a bit broken. The barn's literally broken.
I think what's interesting actually about that,
Blue Diamond's broken.
In danger of potentially extending this any further, but I will say I am interested to see what the housing situation will be when everyone returns to Earth.
I'm quite interested in the return to Earth in general.
Where does Bismuth, Lapis, and Peridot? Where do they go? Where are they going? Are they staying in the? Are we getting more doors in the Crystal Temple, or what's the sitch?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Yeah. I don't know how soon we're going to get back there though, but yeah.
No. I don't know how soon.
Well, the thing is,
I'd settle for an episode.
Yeah, but even if we get back there, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Even if we get back there in 6 episodes, that can still take 2 years. So. But luckily, we found highbrow quality content to fill the hiatus with.
Yeah, dear Lord.
I will. Oh, also, and we must remember to do this, but I will give them a shout out now because it's a really good point, and I did make a note of it to shout it out. Someone on YouTube put Ruben Caballero. Apologies again if I'm saying that wrong. Not a ship, but I really want you to talk about the relationship between Stephen and Lars through the show at some point. So include it on the next episode, or maybe when you rewatch Lars and the Cool Kids, please talk about it. So we will make an effort to do that at some point for you.
Not been forgotten. I saw that
comment, Stephen.
I saw that comment too. Has not been forgotten. We will get.
So we will do that.
I guess next week are we doing We're doing
a rewatch next week.
Doing a rewatch, yeah. I think Bubble Buddies is probably next. Then should I have a quick look at the episode list and just quickly confirm which one we'll do? I think I think Bubble Buddies is the next logical episode for us to do. Let me quickly scan the list I made. Because I made a list, a sort of like a half list, just like I didn't want to commit to which episodes we were definitely going to do because we've discovered certain episodes have been worth discussing that we weren't expecting to be like Cheeseburger Backpack. Bubble Buddies, I think, is probably the next one we should talk about. It's the introduction of Connie, especially in the wake of the shipping episode.
Yeah, and it's also literally the episode after Cat Fingers, so we're definitely not missing any episodes.
Yeah, I thought there was one or two between, but there isn't. So
no,
that's what I was double checking.
So yeah, Bubble Buddies is next. Cool.
Yeah, so we'll do. Yeah, we'll I think that's worth. Yeah, no, I think that's worth our time. I think that's particularly in the wake of the shipping conversation, I suppose, and the relationship conversation in general. Looking at Stephen and Connie's first meet will be an interesting thing in the context of this conversation. So, we'll tackle that next week. So, thanks everyone very much for listening. 2 weeks on the trot, we've gone well over an hour. I guess whenever we do, I think the problem is whenever we do user comment stuff, we've got such a great listenership that even with our small little group, the small little group of people we've cultivated that listen to these videos and comment on them, you're all very active. Like I this is what I've said in the past. Like you're small but mighty. Like there's not many of you, but you're all really engaged. Definitely. And I would rather have 100 people listening to these that's super engaged with the discussion and getting involved and sending us comments than thousands of people listening that we never hear from. So I really like that you guys, the people who do watch and listen to these videos, like super engaged with the discussion itself rather than just being passive, sort of casual, like just like, oh, it's just a thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So what's wonderful is the fact this episode and the last one went so long is a tribute and a comment on how great you guys are. Whenever we've asked you guys to fill in, whether it was the Q&A episodes or things like this, where we've asked you guys to sort of give suggestions, we've always had so much feedback, and that's incredible. Like, we are very, very lucky to be able to draw on you guys for content in these dark, dark, desolate times. But I genuinely mean that in the nicest way. Like, you guys are incredible, so thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. So everything for this week, then, I guess. So, do you want to take us home, Chris? Since you, we didn't really talk about this, but you may have noticed again, Chris steering the ship this week. I thanks to Chris. I've been very busy at work and stressed and tired, and Chris picked up the slack this week and did the research for me. And I think, and I really appreciate that you did that.
No, it's all right. No, not at all. Not at all. It was a pleasure to read through all the comments. And again, this was even more of a challenge not to miss anything. So you got your ways to talk to us, talk ship in Discord, and comment below if we have.
I feel like I need to create a separate Discord channel now that's just called Talk Ship. And them all just like...
Yeah, I'd see. The thing is, I've said it enough now that I know it will get abused slightly. I know I'm gonna get like Greg and White Diamond Talk Ship.
Hashtag Talk Ship, guys. Let's do this. Let's do this. Maybe we'll do a sequel episode where we go through some more of your incredible suggestions. I would be up for that. Those were so good, especially those last few really silly ones. They were great.
Cool. Right. I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And we'll see you next week for our hiatus episode, rewatching Bubble Buddies.